Hello. Hello, guys. I can see five participants. If someone is there, say hi, please. Am I audible? Okay. Hello. 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 Wait here. So I'm trying this live for the first time, and I don't see any option for screen share. Okay. Mm, so are you guys able to hear my voice? I can see three or four people in the live now. If you guys hear my voice, you can just ping in the chat. Okay. Okay. So because I have prepared some PPT for today's session, but since this is my first YouTube live, I thought it would be having some sharing options, but I don't see it there. Uh, okay. Just give me a minute. Okay, so let me share you guys the link of the PPT. Okay, so you can just open it and I'll walk you through that PPT. I can see there are four people in there in this chat, and I'll make the PPT publicly available so that anyone can see that. Okay, so so this is the PPT. I'll share the link in the chat. So So I think scale through. I think Santesh it might be. So Santesh, I think I couldn't share this screen in YouTube Live. I think there should be some software I need to have to share. I believe, but I wasn't prepared for this. Sorry for that. But I have shared the PPT link now. Hope you guys might able to open it. Okay, so I'll just go through one by one in the slides so that you guys can follow that. I believe, right? Okay, so let me start the session now. Yeah, I could see there are two people access the PPT now. Okay, so since I'm only conducting this session, I don't have anyone else to help here. So I'll have a look into this chat at a later time, maybe after 15-20 minutes. If there are any questions, I'll answer. Okay, so let me start. It's almost 8 minutes now. Yeah, thank you. So let me start. So this session is more into a beginner's introduction to DevOps practices. So I am planning to conduct a series of session related to DevOps and CICD, and then followed by tool specific sessions basically. So maybe like the follow-up sessions, I may be better try to record it in a screen share and I'll post it. But I just wanted to try it out live for the first time, so that's the reason I couldn't try it out with the screen sharing and all. I wasn't aware earlier, so let me start the session. So basically, this session is more into beginner's introduction to DevOps practices. So DevOps is one of the buzzword that is being in the market of software industry for quite a while now. And I just wanted to share my understanding about DevOps practices. Okay, and what are all the things involved in DevOps practice. So I'm moving on to slide 2 now. Okay, so this is about me. So I'm Saravanan. I'm kind of working as a DevOps SRE automation practitioner for more than 8 years now, and I'm a technology blogger. I would like to share about technical stuff I'm doing as a blogs, and I also have a GitHub repositories where I post all the POCs and stuff. So since I'm a contributor to community, I got recognized as Hashicorp ambassador as well as AWS community builder. And I'm also doing free mentoring for career guidance and resume reviews and for students and early career folks. So if anyone wants to connect with me, you can just you can just talk to me by blocking time in Calendly. So I'm passionate about automating and designing and automating infrastructure solutions and application deployment solution. I have quite a good experience in setting up platform for CI/CD, DevOps, and those kind of stuff. So currently, I'm exploring as the entrepreneurship path, and recently incorporated my own company. But the background work for the company to commence the work is going on. And I am also working as a freelance consultant in the DevOps and automation areas. Okay. So if anyone interested to know more about me, they can go to my portfolio website g7.m and you can understand about my work. Okay, that's about it. And I'm moving on to the slide 3, wherein I'm going to talk about the goal of the session. So in this session, I'll be covering up understanding the DevOps concept and what are DevOps practices. So understanding the DevOps concept is important for anyone working in software development and DevOps engineer role, and even in the high stakeholders and like the CEOs and CXOs and all needs to understand the DevOps concept. And then we will see like what are the DevOps practices involved in achieving the DevOps goal, basically, and then we can understand about how to adapt and implement DevOps practices, right? So we will see like what are all the things involved in implementing the DevOps practices. And one of the key thing in the DevOps is related to CI/CD, that we will see like why we need to go for CI/CD, and then we can see how this CI/CD adoption boosts the DevOps practices, right? So that's about it, and then we'll have some Q&A. So in Q&A might be like you guys can post questions in chat, and I'll answer them if I have time around the end, right? So that's about it. I'm just moving on to slide 4 now. Okay. So for any new folks joined, you guys can open the PPT in the chat, okay? And because I don't see the option of screen share here, I'm just share the link of the PPT, and we are kind of discussing about it, right? So yeah, and I'm moving on to the first slide of what is DevOps. So DevOps as a concept, you guys might be knowing, right? So it's been around the industry for more than 7-8 years now. So when it started, DevOps as a concept started with doing the CI/CD, but as the time evolved now, it's not only just CI/CD; it is more than CI/CD. It became as a organizational cultural mindset change now. So basically, if any organization wanted to go to market faster and having an optimized, efficient team and all, so they need to adapt DevOps. It becomes a cultural mindset change, and everybody in the team starts from the top management stakeholder to the the lower the developer. Everybody has to change in the way that they are working, and it helps the organization to go to market faster, and there are other benefits as well, right? So that's the key point of having DevOps. So it's more than CI/CD, that's the key pointer in this slide. So basically, like DevOps and Agile works together for a common goal for achieving automation, right? So basically, when it started as a earlier time, right? So SDLC was there, like software development life cycle was there. It only focused only on software development from the requirement and release the code, right? But like developing the requirement and then building and releasing the code, right? And then there is also other process involved like application development, lifecycle management, wherein the requirement from the task management perspective, somebody from the product management team will be identifying the requirement in their product, and then they will be having meetings with multiple stakeholders and prioritizing the task, and then it will come for development, right? So that's a kind of ADLM process. So wherein this agile or waterfall or whatever the methodologies were there, right? So they were all there, and everything was in silos. And DevOps also, like one thing as a concept is like it integrates both the development and operations, and now along with agile related planning as well, right? So it nowadays the DevOps practices starts from the planning itself, so that everybody in the team works together and works for achieving the common goal of releasing the error-free, fully tested product to the production, right? So that's the key concept. Now, DevOps as a practice that is also embedded, having Agile also has an embedded option in it, right? So that's the pointer here. So That's the key message in this slide. And there are multiple advantages of advantages we are having for adapting DevOps practices, right? So the first one is, as I mentioned, since we are DevOps is automation prioritized, right? So every product can be released faster to the market, and due to that, practices on adapting the uh, code packaging and all, the system stability will be achieved, right? So basically, previously what happens, like, development team would be developing them there, and there is, if there is no proper process followed, some other code would be, like, deployed to testing and other environments, right? So by achieving DevOps practices, everything would be automated, and so that the same code or packages getting deployed to the other environments as well, so that system stability is achieved. And there is also infrastructure automation would be involved in DevOps practice, so that whatever configured to the development environment, that can be captured as a requirement and automated to implement in the other environments, right? So that helps for the improved system stability and less time to recover, since everything is automated from monitoring of the application, right? So if there are any issues happen with failures, we can easily recover faster because everything is automated, right? And DevOps practice also and making it mandatory to have the test automation, right? So that every code that is getting released will be automatically tested using the pipeline or whatever the methodology we are following, right? And DevOps practice also like underlying that concept of security focus as well. From development to the code release, we can also have the security focus in it. And DevOps as a practice, improving the overall team productivity, because everyone would be working together and working for the same goal, right? So, and since it is also involving in automation of everything, it will be good to adapt to DevOps because of the increased team productivity, right? So that's about it. Okay, so I'm just peeping into the other chat window. Okay, okay. So I think my son has logged in, I believe, in the name of my wife. Okay, so I'm moving on to that next slide, slide number 5, wherein I have mentioned how to implement DevOps practices, right? So as I mentioned, DevOps as a practice, incorporating both SDLC, ADLM concepts into one umbrella, right? So that starts with the Agile software development methodology, right? So basically, anyone nowadays working as a feature teams, right? You guys might be knowing about it, right? So if someone is a DevOps engineer, they might be part of a feature team wherein other developers and testers and BAs and everybody would be there as a concept, right? So whenever there is a feature is getting scoped for development in a particular sprint, let's talk about in the Scrum technology only. So if there is if there is a requirement that is scoped for development in the particular release, since we have a feature team of people from the representation from all the teams, right? From from product owner, BA, and developer, tester, DevOps engineer, and operations engineer, cloud engineer. Everybody should be part of that. It's not a mandatory thing. Everybody should be have everybody should be there. What I'm trying to say is, if a cloud engineer can know about can be a if cloud engineer knows about DevOps practices, right? So he can work as a DevOps engineer, right? It's depending on the team size, right? If there's a requirement to have a separate cloud engineer, they can have it. But if more than one people, one people can play more than one role in the sense, that is also fine. But the underlying concept is, as a Scrum team, there should be representation from everybody, from the SDLC and life cycle perspective, right? So that whenever there is a task is getting scoped, right, for the feature development, everybody would be involving in the understanding of that, how the task will be implemented, so that tester can know about what kind of automation they can do, and DevOps engineer know about what is the programming language they are going to create as a package, right? So, and then operations engineer would be knowing about what kind of product is going to be released in production. So those kind of things, right? So that's why, like, the dev and ops and other stakeholders from the important part of the product is involving in the agile software development. So that is one of the important concept of having a agile software development team for the implementing DevOps, right? And then second important thing is implementing like continuous integration and the continuous delivery or deployment. So anyway, like I'll talk about that in upcoming slide about what is the difference between delivery and deployment. Basically, from the code check-in to the code release, right? So basically, everything has to be automated, right? So that's when, when we are having a DevOps engineer within the same feature team, he can work closely with the developer to understand what kind of changes they may need to make in the pipeline, or those kind of understanding they can have, and they can start implementing parallelly whenever the code is getting ready or developed, right? So similarly, developer also needs to know what kind of automation test that needs to be created for unit testing, and they can also give inputs to the test automation engineer or manual tester to know about what kind of test cases they need to create, right? So that's about automating the continuous integration, and it also involved automation of creating packages and how it is going to deploy into the infrastructure. Basically, it can be cloud or on-premises or whatever it is, right? So they can just work closely. Everybody can work closely with each other and achieve this continuous integration and continuous delivery and all the deployment, right? So just for the introduction, like continuous delivery is something quickly I can just tell about it, and I'll explain more in the upcoming slide, right? So continuous delivery is something we can the code or package can be deployed, or whatever the artifact can be deployed without any approval is called continuous deployment. And the continuous delivery, it needs to have approval before pushing it to the next environment, right? For example, continuous delivery approval deployment can happen in higher environments like staging and production, and deployment can happen in integration test environment, right? Wherein infrastructure can be created and it will be deployed automatically without any approvals, right? Because it's a lower test environment, right? So that's the import. That's one of the key implementation factor in DevOps, in implementing the DevOps practice. And then version control management, right? So whenever there is a project is getting started, there is a proper version control management strategy needs to be set up, like how they wanted to release the code, and what would be the development process, and what would be the release process, and what would be the go-live process. Everything has to be decided, and based on that, branching strategy needs to be finalized. And then they can also have a PR approval process in pushing the code after the reviewing the code, right? Or manual or automated reviews, and based on that, the PR suggestions, the approval can happen, so that we can make sure that the only tested code goes to the production, right? So that's how it is. So that's the another important factor in that implementing DevOps practice, right? So version control management is important. And next thing is infra as a code, right? So basically, previously when everything was traditional, infrastructure will be created manually. So it takes time for the code to get deployed, right? So they have to procure server, they have to reach out to some teams for networking enablement and all, and then some team would be installing the operating system, and another team would be installing the software required for deploying the code. And there are so many approval processes, and everything was there. So as part of implementing DevOps as a practice, we can automate everything like infrastructure creation using infrastructure code tools like Terraform, or if it is a cloud provider specific, we can use AWS Terraform, CloudFormation, or Azure ARM kind of infrastructure code tools, right? So that every infrastructure creation can be automated, and whenever the developer develops the requirement, the required changes in the infrastructure can be automated in parallel to the development process, and then whenever the code is ready to be deployed, it can be the infrastructure automation can be used to deploy the code, right? So that's the idea of having infrastructure code in the DevOps practice. And similarly, software configuration management is something like patch management or applying changes to the specific set of servers, right? Wherein the tools like Ansible, Chef, and all coming into picture. So if there is a set of database server in which there is only one security patch needs to be installed, in the sense we can automate that as well using software configuration management tool. And it is important to have it as part of the DevOps practice implementation, right? And then finally, coming to this monitoring, observability, and a process improvement kind of automation stuff, wherein it will be the part of the operations of the particular application, right? So that it will be involved in the production operations team. uh, they would be monitoring that applications infrastructure, and then application performance itself, right? So here, this is where this concept of SRE and all coming into picture. So this is the kind of high level pointers on, not on a high level, but as per my understanding, these are all the important implementation details that is needed to adapt it to the DevOps practice, right? So I'm just moving on to next slide number 6. So these are some of the problems resolved by CICD as a process, right? Because since we are trying to focus more on in the ongoing upcoming sessions, we'll just try to focus more on CI/CD process. I just wanted to talk more on this about what kind of processes or problems CI/CD is resolving, right? Like an anti-patterns, in the overall SDLC cycle, like what are the things that is done wrongly so far, and that will be resolved by CI/CD process, right? So as I mentioned in that other slide, using CI/CD source code, where source code management can be improved, right? Like using the branching strategies and PR approvals, and release process can be streamlined using CI/CD, so that everybody would be knowing about it, and there is a thumb rule kind of document needs to be created on how to do things on source code management, right? Like the process of how the development happens, and everything needs to be documented before the project starts, and it has to be like you know uh, formulated, right? And CI/CD as a process, source code is the triggering point for any code deployment to be triggered, right? So that needs to be formulated very well, so that future issues can be avoided, right? And the release complexity will be avoided using CI/CD process, because traditionally, if there is no proper release process, right, untested code will be deployed into higher environment, and there will be multiple issues and all will be happening, right? So basically, that kind of release complexity will be resolved because everything would be automated and decided prior to the deployment processes and all, right? So that release complexity will be resolved by CI/CD. And then inconsistent package management is another problems faced by teams, right? So developer creates one package in their development environment, they forget to push it, or there may be some misses happen from developer in the sense the previous package or improper package would be deployed into other environments, right? Since the package management can be done via container based or var file based deployment nowadays, it will be stored in the artifact registry, right? So that whenever there is a code is freeze or finalized, it will be pushed to the artifact, and from artifact is the single source of truth for deploying it to the higher environments, right? So inconsistent package management will be resolved by this process. And one of the major thing resolved by CI/CD as a process is like manual deployments, right? So teams takes multiple, so much of time to deploy their code once after the development is complete. So basically, they would be using this manual deployment process. They would be raising a request to some team, and they would be taking the package from the commonly stored location, right? I'm talking about traditionally, right? So there would be now not much proper tracking would be there, and so this kind of issues can be resolved by adapting into the CI/CD process, right? Wherein every deployment would be implemented as an automated pipeline, and it will be used for deployment. And traditional method automated testing would be lacking, so that due to that reason there would be delays in doing the manual testing and all, right? So CICD as a process recommending to have a proper automated testing for integration testing environment or system testing environment, regression testing environment, or whatever the process the team wanted to follow. For everything, automated testing is recommended, right? So that's the one of the key thing in the CICD as a process to be implemented. And then inconsistent environment configuration is something like, for a particular development requirement, there is some changes needs to be done in environment. In the sense, if it is a manual thing, it may be there may be a chance it may be missed in the other environments, right? Since we are kind of talking about infrastructure automation as a key, one of the pillar in CI/CD implementation, so this kind of inconsistent environment configurations will be avoided, right? So that's the point. And the lack of security practices, like now it is also mandated to have a security as an important thing in the DevOps process, wherein static code analysis or container port management or container image scanning and those kind of things can be important, and it can be also automated as part of CI/CD process, so that the security issues will be resolved basically whenever the code is getting released. Okay, so that's about the thing on problems resolved by CI/CD. Okay, I'm just peeping into the chat window, and I'm just moving on to the next slide, wherein I have depicted some of the general flow of deployment automation. Okay, so basically, like no, as I mentioned, DevOps practice recommending things from from the planning itself, right? But I skipped the planning part and all here. Only I mentioned about the CI/CD process here. So whenever there is a feature task is getting developed, right? So it may be tools like ALM tools like Jira or Azure DevOps or whatever it is, right? So these kind of tools nowadays can track a requirement from the requirement till the release, right? So that's why they are all calling it as application lifecycle management tools, right? Due to which that traceability would be achieved. So if there is any development happens or any feature development happens, it has to start from the planning, analysis, design, as I mentioned in the slide number 4, right? And then it will be scoped, it will be created as a backlog, and it will be coming into the development. It will be scoped for development, and if it is a Scrum model, there would be sprint planning would be there, and task will be scoped for development, right? So when the task development is completed, and this developer would be pushing their code to like no source control tools like Git or Bitbucket or whatever it is, right? So that's when the CA process starts, right? So CA as a process starts when the code developer checks in the code into the source control management, and then the build process, unit testing process, and package creation process would be automated basically. But for doing that, developer has to try things like have a proper development environment in their workstation, and these things can be first tested properly manually in their development environment. And once they make sure that the code works fine, and if there is a possibility to automate the unit testing, they can also do that. And it also needs to be part of the CA process pipeline basically. And then comes this package management, wherein container management tools like Docker and all coming into picture. For that, developer or DevOps engineer, whoever responsible for creating the Docker file, they need to create the Docker file, right? So for if a developer doesn't aware about the Docker file, they can take help from DevOps engineer on how to create a Docker file. And the DevOps engineer need to talk with the developer to understand the this one called build and deployment build and deployment process of the particular package basically, right? So that they can create a Docker file for that. So continuous integration starts when the developer checks in the code till the package creation and stored into the artifact kind of registries like Nexus or Docker Hub or wherever it is, right? Or ECR. So like that, right? So checking to package storing into the registry is the CI process, continuous integration process. Then comes the continuous deployment process, wherein this continuous deployment is something like, as I mentioned, without any approval of teams, we can just deploy the code into that next, like promoting the code to next environment without any approval is called a continuous deployment. So that it can be tested immediately, right? So in this case, I mentioned a test environment. It would be a lower test environment wherein there is a requirement, if, as I mentioned in the previous slide, right? So if there is a development as part of the development of the particular requirement, if there is an environment changes needed, that environment change has to be automated as a Terraform code or infra code kind of tools can be used for that purpose, and it will be used for spinning up the test environment. And since developer has already completed, let's assume, right, developer has already completed every process as a process in the CA, it will be pushed in the artifact tools like registry, right? So what it will do, it will spin up the environment, new environment, lower test environment, and then it will be deployed automatically by picking up the package from the registry or Nexus or wherever it is, right? So that's the kind of process. And the CA also include static code analysis. I haven't depicted here, but it is also important as part of security. But I'm just focusing only on the important parts of CI/CD process, right? So continuous deployment as a process starts from the picking up the package from the registry kind of tools, and then spinning up an environment, and then deploying it in the lower test environment. But again, this kind of processes and all needs to be discussed prior to finalizing the development processes, right? So whenever the project is getting started, everyone as a team discuss like a DevOps lead or DevOps architect or and stakeholders and product owners, and everybody has to come to an agreement on the what kind of CA and CD process they are going to follow. Okay, even for lower test environment, if they wanted to have a on approval deployment, in the sense like it may not be possible to do it using continuous deployment. There is approval process needs to be introduced. Okay, so that's how it is. And finally comes this continuous delivery, wherein after that testing is confirmed, like testing is fine in lower environment, there would be processes needs to be there to someone in the top management needs to approve the code for continuous delivery as to promote it in the staging and production environment, right? So that that we can make sure that it goes through another pair of eyes to before moving on to the go live environment, right? So that's the process of CA and CD and like continuous deployment and delivery. So major difference of deployment is like there is no approval for promoting the code to an environment, but in the continuous delivery there is an approval needed. So that's the key pointer here, right? So that's the information in this slide. Okay. So as part of my upcoming session, maybe I wanted to talk more on this CI/CD process. Okay, using GitHub Action. Okay, that anyway, like I'll schedule some time, and I'll keep you guys posted. Okay, and now I'm moving on to slide number 8. So this is an example CI/CD architecture depicting the tools. This is again the example tools only. This is not the only tool. There are multiple tools available in the market with respect to open source and enterprise tools, like with the licenses and all. So this is like more of a open source tools only depicted here. So left side of this diagram in the slide number 8 is development, and right side is like operations, right? Like it has development has like build code and testing, and right side is like deployment, operate and monitor, right? So so as I mentioned, it also having a phase called planning phase, in which Jira kind of tools are involved, right? So that's how it is. So basically, for code development, the tools depicted here are Git, and they also mentioned Jira and Confluence for task management and documentation part, right? And then code build happens using some IDE, and then Maven kind of tools can be used for building the code. Here it's like Java, so in this depiction, it's a tool set for Java they depicted. So it used Maven and Selenium for automated unit testing and JUnit for unit testing cases. And then the tools like Jenkins or CodeShip or GitHub Actions can be used for creating the release orchestration pipeline. And then deployment can happen, like infrastructure creation can be created using AWS CloudFormation or Terraform automation, right? And then containerize the application, and those kind of things can be happening in the deployment part. And then operate is something like, as I mentioned, patching and those kind of stuffs can be there. And Kubernetes comes into this part of operating the containers, wherein it will be orchestrating the containers better. And then monitor is something like, the production operations team monitoring the product, like, what are production operations, like basically that monitoring of applications as well as application infrastructure as well. Both will be monitored as part of the monitoring, so that there will be some agents running in the servers, and we also need to collect metrics with respect to applications that needs to be monitored, right? So that we can make sure that observability and reliability is achieved, right? So this is an example depiction, okay? And if someone is trying to learn on more on DevOps, right? So since there are more tools involved, people would be overwhelmed by the tools in the market, right? So what I would suggest is, like, first, as a process, they need to understand what are all the things involved, as I discussed in this session, right? So they need to understand how development happens, how the planning happens, and everything as a whole they need to understand. And with respect to implementing deployment automation as a CI/CD processes, right? They can understand about, they can understand, or they can be learn one tool as a strong, and they can understand one tool and gather knowledge about that one tool, and the learning of other tools are only comparative study, right? For example, if you know Jenkins, you can learn GitHub Actions or GitLab pipeline CCD, right? Similarly, if you know, like, Jira as a tool, other ALM tools like Azure DevOps and all easy, right? Similarly, for everything with that aspect, like, if you can understand, like, what kind of programming languages, you can just pick one programming languages for learning a DevOps for DevOps learning, and just focus on end-to-end flow of implementing things in the DevOps actually. Okay, for the particular programming language. Okay, so that's my general suggestion about it. But if anyone wants to know more about how to set up a career in DevOps, you can just block a time in my calendar. We can just talk about it for, and I can help you out further. Okay. So that's about it, and this is the kind of this is the thing I wanted to cover. Okay, and anyone has any query, you can just post it. In the meantime, I'll just summarize like what we have covered. So in this session, we covered, like, what is DevOps as a practice, and understood that it's not only CI/CD, it is an organization and cultural mindset change, wherein it should come from top stakeholder management team to the developer level, so that everyone will be aligned with the same goal of releasing their product faster without any errors and those kind of stuff, right? And then we discussed about what are the DevOps practices like Agile software development, CI/CD, version control, and infrastructure code monitoring stuff and all. And then we discussed about problems resolved by CI/CD, like, what are the things that can be resolved using CI/CD. And finally, we gone through the flow of deployment automation, and we gathered knowledge on continuous integration, continuous deployment, and continuous delivery. Finally, we have seen it example Java deployment architecture for using the tools depiction and all. So that's the knowledge we gathered. Okay, and it's time for Q&A. Let me quickly see that chat. Okay. Okay, so Satya K asking, is it possible to move DevOps domain without coding knowledge? Yes, Satya. So for becoming a DevOps engineer, right, coding knowledge is not important. I would not say it's not completely important, but it is important. Okay. So basically, as you have seen in this session, right? So as a DevOps engineer, you also need to understand how development happens. It is not necessary that you need to develop something, but at least if you are creating a Java deployment automation, right? You need to know how Java package gets created, okay? And those kind of stuff you need to understand, Satya, okay? Like, and but for example, programming knowledge in the sense like no infrastructure as a automation as a code tools like Terraform or Python, Boto 3 and all needed some knowledge on programming, but it would be easy to learn, right? Because there is a detailed documentation is available on how to create things, right? For example, Boto 3 would be used for AWS automation using Python code. Similarly, Terraform also needs some level of programming knowledge, but there is not extensive knowledge needed. But as you grow as a DevOps engineer, you also needs to grow or know about how to do things programmatically, right? There is some requirement, but it's not mandatory for someone to move to DevOps. Programming is necessary. Like no, it's not necessary basically. If someone wants to just move to operations background from DevOps, they can just know about the overall understanding of development processes and how they can automate things, right? And as I mentioned, they can pick up one programming language as a tool and they can try to learn about how to automate that CI/CD pipeline for one programming language, right? In that process, they will learn about build, package, and infrastructure creation if it is needed and those kind of stuff needed. But if someone is moving from general thing to DevOps domain, programming is not needed. But as they grow in the level of DevOps engineer, it may be needed later point in time. Okay. And if you guys have any other questions, you can post it to me. And sorry for today's thing because I thought YouTube live would be allowing to screen share, but looks like there is a screen sharing software needed for this, I believe. So I think if there is any more questions, otherwise we can close the session maybe. Anyway, I have some 12 more minutes left. So in the upcoming session, I will talk about creating a, I have a demo repository for Golang code, and I can show you like, it may be a series of session only, okay. And since I wanted to try out YouTube live, I just tried this today. Let's see, because in coming weekend, I am planning for a LinkedIn live for blog creation. Maybe I need to be prepared for that if there is a screen share possible and all before the session. Okay, I think if there is no more questions, we can end the stream now, I believe. Okay, and you can follow me on this channel G Surrounded Tech. Okay, yeah, and I also write. Uh, I also write blogs. Okay, in dev2 slash yes. Okay. So there are some beginner blogs for starting up with the Terraform or Git or what kind of whatever that DevOps related tools. If someone wants to getting started, they can go through my blogs. And there is also series related to Kubernetes learning, Terraform learning, and stuff basically, and AWS as well. Basically, like no, I haven't posted any blogs recently, but I'm in the process of writing some more blogs, and it will be coming in coming days. Okay, and this is my portfolio website. And there are all the social links like LinkedIn and everything is available there. If someone wants to follow me there, you can just follow me. And if you have any questions related to DevOps or development career setup and all, you can just let me know. I'm happy to help you guys. Okay. Thank you, and thank you for the folks who have joined. And thanks, and have a great rest of the evening. Bye bye.